to get the notes and homework all in one with this. This is the actual homework. So just in case you're wondering, and I'll get it listed up on the board in the back so we don't have any confusion. But when we're doing radical equations, okay, and you don't have to write this on here, it's on the note sheet from yesterday. My first job is always to get the square root, to get the radical by itself, because then I can deal with it. Okay? And then my only other job is to square both sides, because squared and square root cancel each other. They're opposites. It lets me get that kind of radical jail out of there. We're off and running. So, for instance, when we get to that part and we look at these first few problems, numbers 1, 2, and 3 all have the radical by itself already. So in any of these, all I've got to do to be ready to solve it is square both sides right away. And by doing that, the squared and the square root will wipe each other out and just leave me what's underneath. The 3x is now free. The other side is where I've got to be careful. 6 squared is 6 times 6, okay? Not 6 times 2, which would be 36. You can even punch that in the calculator if you're not sure. You can hit 6 times 6. And then what's my one step to get x by itself? Divide by 3. Okay, and I'm good to go. So don't let yourself get caught here going, this is going to be long. They're not long. They're not. Well, let's do number 3 while we're here. Radicals alone already. Get that out of there. So we'll square it. Squared and square root. X plus 4 is now free. And 5 squared is 5 times 5, which is 25.
Why did you put the 2 there?
Because this is like anything we ever do with any equation. Sort of like before when we just do a 2-step equation, even like here. Since I divide this side by 3 to get x alone, I got to do the same to the other side.
Oh.
So what I'm doing...
It's not even doing anything. It's even
right. Well, on this...
taking the other thing.
Yeah, on the left side, this little 2's whole job is just to take that square root out of there so I can work with it.
Right.
The thing that can be tricky sometimes, though, is remembering I got to do it to this side because it's like there's no square root over there. Why am I even bothering? But I have to do the same thing to both sides.
Okay.
And then it just becomes a regular old do the opposite to get x by itself.
And you have to show, like, they can get you.
No, if you want to go straight to this, that's absolutely fine. Okay? So that's kind of what we're up to here. Now, today I'm going to throw a couple of twists at you, though. Question? Oh, question? Oh, no, I just was saying that, and I thought I saw a hand, so I was like, question?
Can you do number 6?
I was just coming to that one. Number 6 you're going to like. We're going to get out of doing work here. Whenever I take a square root of a number, okay, I always have to have something come out that's positive. Otherwise, it doesn't work. You're like, well, what do you mean? Okay, let's say we were just doing this problem like we've been doing the rest of them. So you put your squared on here. Okay, those cancel. So 5n minus 1. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. So you're kind of going along going, okay, this is just like the rest of them. What would be my next step if I was trying to get n alone? Okay, need to add 1. And I'm rolling along here, and I'm going, okay, this is really no different than any of the rest of them. I'm going to divide by 5. I get an answer, and I go on to the next problem. But here's the problem, and here's the one case where this can get us into trouble. If I were to take that 2 and plug it back in, so let's just say I go, okay, so 5 times 2 would be 10. So I'm going to take the square root of 10 minus 1, which is 9. Okay, it equals 3. Well, wait a minute. The answer here says negative 3. What's the deal? If you ever get one of these problems and you go to do the squared to both sides, and there's a negative number on the other side, okay, you're going to find out if you work through the end and checked it. And I'm not telling you need to check every single one,
Are
okay?
you gonna get points off if you don't? Right, like most of the
You'd have to, because, the answer 2 isn't right, though. Because if I plug in 2, I get positive 3 as an answer out here, like I just saw on my calculator. And they say the answer is negative 3. So if, okay, if you have a negative, I guess we'll call it answer here for lack of a better term, okay, when you go to square it, it automatically becomes no solution. You don't even have to show me any work. If this is by itself and you go to square and that's negative, we're done. Because that's going to cause us a problem every time. They don't happen very often, but they do happen occasionally, and that's why I wanted to get that one out there so you could see how that worked. Okay? Couple other little things, nothing real else that's going to be earth-shattering here. Let's move to, like, I don't know, number 8. Because I want to make a little comparison here. Now, if you look at number 7 and number 8, besides the fact, of course, that the numbers are different, what's another difference that you see? Okay. Okay. That could be one. Another thing I noticed is over here, this whole side of the problem is underneath the square root. This side, it's just the 6x. So before I square this time, I need to get this by itself.
Like when you get the sign with the 4, right, on number 10, do you times 7 or 4, do you like square?
Right, but in that case on 10, that's all underneath the radical, so I'd have to do the squared part first. I'm actually going to do that one next. Yeah, I'll do that one next. So since that 5's not under the radical, I'm going to minus it out first. That's different. Number 7, I'd square it first. Now that my radical, my square root's on a side by itself, now I can do my squared, which will wipe out that radical, that square root sign, and free my 6x. 8 squared is 64, and if sometime you get a decimal for an answer, that's not a bad thing. It happens. So anybody out there got what 64 divided by 6 is?
10.6.
Okay. And on that, if you want to round to like 10.7, or if you want to put 10.66 repeating, that's okay. Okay. Either of those would be just fine. But that's how that particular one's going to end up working out for us. Now, when we get down to something like 10 or 11, notice that whole thing is still underneath the square root. It's still underneath the radical. So when I'm doing these, okay, that's isolated already. I can go ahead and do the squared thing right off the bat. Because now those wipe out and just leave me with the x over 6. And what's 4 squared going to be? 16. 4 times 4. So now I've only got one step left to get x alone. Right now I'm dividing it by 6. What's the opposite going to be? Multiply. So if I times by 6, this 6's whole job over on the left is just to wipe that out. I don't make it 6x. And 16 times 6 is 96. And that one's done. So there's not a lot changing with what we were doing yesterday. It's just now being cautious with a few little things. I want to see what else I can get myself into trouble with here on the back. Oh, I see a couple we get to skip. We always like finding those. On the back, when you get there, number 16 and number 17, for right now we are going to wipe. We are not quite prepared. Ooh, and 21. Oh, mercy. I should have just, I could have just changed them. Oh well, too late. I actually should have just changed a couple of things, but that's all right. So when I get here to the back, one more twist to throw at you. Let me scooch down here a little. So like, for instance, if we look at number 15, you're like, ooh. Now the radical's technically not all by itself over here. Do I divide by 3 right away? And the answer is no, and here's why. When I've got radicals on both sides like this, I can go ahead and square right away. Now here's how it's going to work though. The squared and the square root will cancel. So that's not so bad. But on the right here, I've got this 3 and I've got the square root of x. That squared is going to both of those. So here's how this is going to work. 3 squared is 9. There's no radical there. But then when we get to this part, the squared and the square root cancel, just like they always do. You're like, whoa, it becomes 9x. Yes. So square the number, but then just cancel out the radical with the rest, and now I solve it like I would any regular equation. So what might I want to do here next now that I'm rid of the radicals? I'm going to go with the -6 here because since I have x's on both sides, I want to get those situated first. If I just move the 21, I'm just going to end up moving it again in a minute. So now I've got the plain number, my constant on one side, and my x terms by themselves on the other, which is a good plan for us to have. And then my last step is just to divide by 3. And that covers every crazy, whacked out thing that we could end up having to deal with here, I believe. I think we've got it covered. So, this sheet, finishing off the rest, working through them, showing your steps and stuff, is the rest of the assignment. There's one more opportunity out there. I've had some people asking me about extra credit because they've got a 0 here or there that they don't want to, they don't really want to mess with. So now I've put up on the table, I didn't put it out right away because if you didn't want it, I didn't want you taking it, is this. It's just some more of the same types of questions, but it can help you to knock out an extra assignment if you've got a 0 that's going somewhere. So basically there's enough room here at the bottom of this sheet that you're not seeing that's white in the back to be able to just clean it up, knock it out, and be done. So if you're feeling confident with this stuff, hey, here's a shot to be able to get back maybe one of those assignments that you didn't do in one of the other sections because you didn't want to, didn't feel like it, was having issues with it, whatever. Okay? But those are up in the front, but only grab one if you're actually going to start working through some of them. And it's one of those, you're like, ooh, I don't want to do 22 of them. I'll do like 10 of them. Okay, do half of them. I'll give you half the credit. That's fine. I'll work with you on that. So knock this out, and we'll kind of go from